Capcom Fighting Collection 2 has been out for a couple of weeks now, and we've been enjoying the wide selection of games on offer. So, when Capcom themselves dropped into our emails and said, hey, you want to talk about it some more, we jumped at the opportunity. Thanks to Capcom for sponsoring this video.
Capcom presents Star Gladiator Episode 2.
The compilation, as packed as Capcom Fighting Collection 2, has plenty of headline-grabbing titles that are worth talking about. The return of Capcom vs SNK has been a long time coming, while Power Stone's comeback is a win for those who love more casual party-style fighting games. Capcom even brought back Rival Schools, a franchise that many assumed would never, graduate. Beyond those games though, there is one game that might be overlooked by many but still deserves your undivided attention, and that's
Plasma Sword, Nightmare of Bilstein.
An underrated and overlooked 3D fighter from an era when the genre had such Goliaths as Tekken and Virtua Fighter. Plasma Sword's oddball characters, development background, gameplay and more make it the most interesting game in the entire collection. Let's talk about why. Plasma Sword Nightmare of Bilstein is actually the second game in this duology. So, where did it all begin? Well, the original game, Star Gladiator Episode 1 Final Crusade, was originally developed and released for the arcades in July 1996, though Capcom were pretty quick to turn around a PlayStation port by October of that same year. Set in the far-flung future, Star Gladiator Episode 1 Final Crusade follows a varied cast of characters led by protagonist, ninja guy and all-round cool dude, Hayato Kanzaki. He's dealing with the rise of a cyborg dictator named Bilstein who's in charge of their own little empire. If the name and premise sound a little bit like they come straight from the world of Star Wars, you'd be correct. As according to former Capcom community manager Seth Killian in an interview with Destructoid, Star Gladiator was originally designed to be a Star Wars game with Star Wars characters. Without wanting to sound too much like a sports commentator, there's a stick-to-itiveness to the development of the original Star Gladiator that makes it so endearing to us here, to ignore the various setbacks and challenges and still swing for the fences. Oh no, I'm stuck in sports mode, I'm a human crook. In Capcom's case, it led to one of their most underrated 3D fighting games, well, ever. While the original Star Gladiator is a worthwhile game in its own right, Capcom Fighting Collection 2 offers the sequel, Plasma Sword, which saw the roster expand with plenty of new and hidden characters. Meanwhile, cyborg evildoer Bilstein recovered from his defeat in the previous game, to be more evil and mechanical and evil than ever before. Actually digging into the characters and lore of Plasma Sword is a trip in and of itself, especially as the roster introduced a total of 14 new characters over the original game, bringing the roster total to 24. There were 2 characters from the first game's roster of 12 who don't appear, Rimgal and Kappa, though Rimgal's lack of appearance in the sequel is because his story ends with him sending himself up to the farm upstate, if you catch what I'm meaning. See, we're still talking about the first game's lore and we're already going pretty hard, so yeah, this duology does not mess around. Plasma Sword ups the ante with the majority of the good guys looking at Bilstein like I look at people who eat custard creams without a cup of tea, though you've got clones, tin men hoping to find their heart, and someone with a bomb sewn into their body. Standard stuff, or at least standard for fighting games, but it's the new elements Plasma Sword introduces to this madcap sci-fi world that really captures the imagination. Take Bayako and Ryon, for instance, who are ruthless alien ninja tigers who are out to dispose of any plasma wielder they meet. If the word alien ninja tigers hasn't made you say, I'll take your entire stock, you might be beyond help. Other new characters in this world of legally distinct lightsabers and ferocious furry foes include Ghost Bilstein, the old mechanical body of Bilstein that contains an essence of the dictator's soul and a burning hatred for Hayato, and Rahe, Bilstein's daughter, who might be more evil and vindictive than her robot dad. There's some other stuff going on there with Rahe's plans, along with her relationship with her father, but we wouldn't want to spoil all of the fun, and also I don't know if I can say it out loud from my mouth. How Plasma Sword actually doled out its story was interesting for the time it was released too, as players would experience each character's individual narrative through their own arcade ladder. Halfway through you'd fight a rival and learn more about some characters, and then you get up to the end and, for the most part, fight Bilstein and receive a standard ending. So far, so fairly normal. However, if you'd earned enough points by then, you'd actually unlock the true ending, which often resulted in another fight and additional cutscenes. Of course, point requirements and hidden fights aren't new to fighting games, but allowing players to unlock rewards in the form of additional lore for doing so was pretty innovative. The closest example we can think of to something similar pre-Plasma Sword is Weapon Lord's endings, adding more pages of text for beating the game on higher difficulties. Cool character designs and an unhinged, in a good way, story does not immediately make a good fighting game, however, so it's an incredibly fortunate job that Capcom made Plasma Sword plenty of fun as well. Compared to some of their other games, Plasma Sword isn't as technical as something like Third Strike, but that works in Plasma Sword's favour. Think of the other 3D fighting games that were around in 1998. Tekken had started to make some real waves in arcades and on home consoles, while Virtua Fighter showed Sega were no slouches in the 3D fighting space either. Capcom needed something bright, colourful and accessible in that market, and Plasma Sword fit the bill. The gameplay itself was a bit of a departure from Star Gladiator, which used the plasma combo system of inputting a certain sequence of moves to unleash the plasma final, which was your strongest attack. It was a bit basic, so Capcom reworked a lot of things to make Plasma Sword its own beast. Out went Ring Out and the plasma combo system, but in were features like a dedicated sidestep button, which allowed players to control space more effectively than before, along with the ability to jump. Yeah, jumping might not sound revolutionary these days, but this was a pretty early-ish 3D fighting game. The only other prominent example of jumping at that time would have been Virtua Fighter, where jumping felt like you're the first man to walk on the moon. The results make Plasma Sword a much faster game to play, with more options for attack while retaining defensive options like Plasma Revenge and Plasma Reflect. If you play it now as part of the collection, you'll find a traditional 3D fighter with plenty of 2D DNA, like super gauges and what have you. But Plasma Sword still retains that pick-up-and-play nature that makes 3D fighters so compelling and accessible. What separated Plasma Sword from the pack during release were the Plasma Field attacks for each character. Alongside the super attacks, which were another feature added compared to the original game, Plasma Field was a special status you could trigger that was semi-unique to each character, and if it connected would transport both fighters to a separate arena where the initiator would have a specific advantage. Think, right, of a domain expansion from JJK and you kinda have an idea. Those advantages are where Plasma Sword gets a little nuts and brilliant. Some of them are a tad basic, with Bilstein and Ghost Bilstein having the ability to hit as many supers as possible during the Plasma Field window, or Geralt and Claire being given multi-hits during their normal attacks. Then we get to the weirder ones like Blood and Shaker's Time Stop, where you can stack up as much damage as possible in a limited time. Or Cade's Mysterious Force, which turns the game into whack-a-mole for a little bit. This is gaming, people. Even though we're of course sad that Capcom didn't include Whack-A-Mole supers in all their fighting games going forward, the idea of Plasma Fields was clearly one that stuck with Capcom, as they used at least one of the Infinity Stones in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite in a similar way. The Time Stone's surge ability feels like a reference to Great Haste, which allowed for much easier combos when attacking. Okay, maybe that is a bit of a stretch, but either way, Plasma Fields are a cool way of giving players more unique tools while fleshing out a character's personality. More of that, please. And really, we'd just love to see more Plasma Sword in the future. It has been about 27 years since this game launched in arcades and on consoles, and aside from a few cameo appearances in crossover fighting games, Plasma Sword hadn't been seen until Capcom Fighting Collection 2. Plasma Sword offers a vibrant sci-fi universe teeming with unique characters and tons of lore. If ever there was a fighting game series begging for some kind of sequel or hack-and-slash spin-off, Plasma Sword would be a great shout. Until then, Capcom Fighting Collection 2 is a brilliant way to experience an overlooked but still worthwhile part of Capcom's illustrious fighting game history. Thanks again to Capcom for sponsoring this video. You can check out Capcom Fighting Collection 2 right now on PC, PS4, Xbox One and Switch. I've been Jimmy for Cultured Vultures. I immediately stained my white hoodie. I don't know, where is it? It's been good to have you, and thanks for watching.